Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I've got a man today who is turning Basingstoke into Amazing Stoke. It's the one and only Scott Morland. Scott, thank you so much for coming on, buddy.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for the intro. Honoured to be on your podcast, and now I've now got to live up to that intro for the rest of the podcast.
Absolutely. It's been long overdue, mate. So it's fantastic to have you on. So for those that don't see you on social media and don't recognize you, talk us through how you got into estate agency and sort of what you do and where you're based at the moment.
Yeah, so I got into a estate agency, well, coming up to 23 years ago now, straight out of school. Well, actually, before I left school, I was actually a leaflet boy. That's where my intro to estate agency began. That then led into being a Saturday boy. And yeah, the minute sort of I left school, I fell into estate agency, working for a small independent. And yeah, progressed from there really. I've always been involved with sort of independence as such up until my Purple Bricks days, but yeah, literally walked straight out of school into estate agency, and haven't left since.
God, I thought I started low by being a junior negotiator, but you kind of gazumped my kind of crap initial job by being leaflet boy there. So,
Yeah,
so how long were
that was
you?
my job after schools and on Saturday mornings up until I got a promotion to a Saturday boy.
Oh, there we go. You'd made it at that point. You got to go to the office. So talk me through. You're at Pub Brick for quite a while. So how did you get into that sort of area, and how long were you there for?
Yeah, so I joined Purple Bricks in 2017. So some that know Purple Bricks would say the good days, the good old days. And I was in a position. I was a sales manager for an independent in Slough at the time. That's where I was working. And I sort of got to the stage where I was sort of I'd outgrown the sort of the potential that business that independent wanted to be. They're a great business. They still go now, but that's as far as I was ever going to get in that business. And the opportunity come up. I had a relative that was actually working for Purple Bricks at the time, and it was very new at the time. Then there wasn't much known about them. And actually, when I met with or spoke to who was my regional sales director then, Christian Howes, and understood Purple Bricks and the opportunities it gave me. It was an exciting time. So yeah, I joined there in 2017. Started there as what they called then an LPE, a local property expert, out doing valuations, instructions, and agreeing sales. That then led to me becoming a territory owner. Got the opportunities, and I'd always sort of went into Purple Bricks from the basis that I made it very clear that I wanted to progress. I wanted to become a territory owner, and build a team, so to speak. So I then got the opportunity in 2019 to take on a territory, which I did, and that grew and grew. And I had sort of pretty much most of sort of all of West London, North London, going out as far as Watford and as far as Uxbridge, etc. So it's quite a big area. And then Purple Bricks went through the change where they then sort of employed everyone, took away the self-employed model and employed everyone. And I got the opportunity to become a sales director, a divisional sales director. So I was looking after pretty much the whole of the south of the UK, bar London. And that was the employed role that I stayed in until November 2022 when I left Purple Bricks and decided to launch my own estate agency with eXp.
So you talked about the good old days, as you phrased it, with regard to Purple Bricks. What changed between the good old days and the could have been better days?
Yeah, I think, and how it was sold to me when I joined Purple Bricks was that although the Purple Bricks brand is there front and center, it's your business to drive, and I think that was the key thing. That was one thing that Purple Bricks has a lot of different sort of views and opinions on it, but one of the things they did very, very well was give people like myself the sort of autonomy to go out and build a business that they could be proud of. And that was something that I was extremely proud of as well. Being able to get your customer reviews at the end of it. And I think you wanted to build your business, you wanted to get recommended, you wanted to have more and more sort of for sale boards and sold boards up, etc. And I think that when they transitioned into the employed world, a lot of that from what I saw was that care went away. People having the sort of being able to pump their chest out and say, yeah, this is my business. It effectively then bred a different type of estate agent, a different type of a business evolved from that really. So yeah, I think that was the key point for me. I think was when you're self-employed, you almost had a huge amount of pride in building your business. But then when you go into the employed world, a load of those options and decision making and that sort of stuff sort of gets taken away from you. And like I say, that it then sort of shifted into a totally different business. And yeah, for me, it was all about getting back to being able to be in control of my business, being able to drive it, do estate agency how I think it should be done, rather than being told from the top down how it needs to be done.
And how many people were sort of under you? You mentioned obviously being territory owner and having sort of the south of the UK. Talk me through the sort of numbers of, I guess, LPEs that you were looking after. What sort
Yeah,
of?
so as a territory owner, I had LPEs and viewing assistants underneath me, and I built up a team of we had a team of 29 that was covering sort of London and West London and North London. And then when I then moved into the divisional sales director role, I'd have been head. Well, I had a team of 10. Well, it went from 8 to 10, and then to 9 area directors, and we had then a team of LPs underneath that that would have been around 120, 125.
Wow, busy guy. So what do you keep with you? What have you maintained? What do you think kind of the things that you took away from working at Purple Bricks you now kind of keep in your business today?
Yeah, I think there's look, Purple Bricks was probably up until now, up until obviously running my own business, it was probably the area of my career that I learned the most, and that was from being around other really strong sort of business leaders, regional directors. Christian Howes, who was my regional director, was a phenomenal leader, and a lot I took away from working with him. I think as my business as my career progressed throughout Purple Bricks, and I then went from a territory owner to divisional sales to area director to a regional sales to a divisional sales director. I think my how I manage people, how I help people grow. You're working with totally different people that are self-employed agents that are then employed agents, and I think that takes a lot. That takes a lot to be able to motivate people in different ways in different arenas. But I suppose stepping into my business now, really understanding that journey, sort of that journey from beginning to end. So in your Purple Bricks days and your hybrid agents, so we call them, it's all about instructions. It's all about getting those sales agreed, and then effectively they get passed over to your post-sale support team. And you don't really hear anything else until it's completed or it falls back through, and you've got to take it back on again. For me, it was understanding that customers need you. Well, they need somebody, or they need you every step of the way, and being able to hold their hand from that absolute beginning stage of taking the property onto the market, valuing it, taking it onto the market, all the way through to that stressful stage of dealing with solicitors, getting it through, getting that sale, that completion date agreed, just being able to hold people's hand throughout that process, I thought was hugely, hugely important. And I think that was highlighted to me over the last sort of 2 or 3 years at Purple Bricks.
Mm. So you get to the point where you think you've had enough of this Purple Bricks malarkey, you want to go out and do it for yourself. What was your mindset at that time? Were you thinking to yourself you were confident and sort of backed yourself to kind of build the business, or where was your mind at that time?
Yeah, so with at the time, so August 2022, just moved into a brand new area in Basingstoke, sort of an hour away from where I used to be, and but I very quickly felt that there was a bit of gap in the market. There was very sort of old school agents in the area. And actually, the process of buying my property was the turning point. I had an awful experience with a local estate agent here, that even to this day, I haven't had a call since completion to say, you've completed, go and pick your keys up. And it just made me think, look, if this is the competition, and after 20 odd years in industry, I can't make a success of a business in this area, then I shouldn't be an estate agency, basically. So that was the sort of pushing point. I suppose the hurdles I had to overcome was that I'd never lived in the area. So the only people I knew that lived locally was my parents. But apart from that, I didn't have any connection. So I really had to start from the ground up. But if I'm honest with you, that was exciting. That was the challenge, and that was exciting to get my name out there. Yeah, that was a couple of sort of hurdles that I had to get over. I suppose the other one was sort of leaving from a very, very well-known brand, to then deciding, right, and there was only two options for me. It was, do I go with the likes of eXp with eXp, or do I go totally alone? And I think that there's a huge difference between the self-employed model is sort of packaged up in one particular model, so to speak, aside from hybrid and aside from traditional estate agency. But I think if I'm honest, there's a number of there's a number of different models within that self-employed model that we see today. I think you've got the likes of your Purple Brickses, your Yopas that are sort of your self-employed, paid upfront agents. You've got then your self-employed agents that work for a brokerage model. That brand is front and center of it, and there's some brilliant brands out there. The Agency UK, the Avenue. There's a number of them out there that are really, really strong brands. And then you've got your networking style that I look at, which is like the likes of your eXp, which is more of a business ownership. It's your name front and center of it. And for me, that was really only ever my option. No disrespect to any of the other brands out there, but that was the area I wanted to go in because I wanted to be able to look to scale the business over a period of time, and take it in the direction that I wanted to take it in, rather than somebody else wanted to take it in. And I suppose I'd also had my hands burnt a little bit from Purple Bricks of building up a really strong business and then it being sort of swept away from me overnight, if you like. So I didn't want that lightning to strike again sort of thing. So yeah, for me, it was aligning myself with either eXp or going totally alone, and sitting down with a number of people at eXp and sort of rolling out what I wanted my next sort of 2 years, 5 years and beyond look like. Yeah, it made absolute sense for me to align with eXp, and yeah, here we are today.
So talk me through the process then. So you're sort of the new boy in town, quite literally, because no one, your mum and dad live there, sort of thing. But apart from that, you're new to the area, you haven't got those connections, and you think, right, I'm going to launch this estate agency malarkey and make it work for me. So where do you begin? What does day one even look like there?
Yeah, so yeah, that was the stark reality check. If I'm being honest with you, Chris, is that I went from being a sales director where my diary was packed out day in day out with meetings, appointments, interviews, whatever it may be, to opening day one of Scott Morland estate agents and the diary being empty, the phone not ringing. So I took a couple of different approaches really. I still had a lot of connections sort of away from my area. So I had a friend of mine that wanted to put his house on the market. A friend of mum wanted to put a house on the market, but they were in my old area, away from where I was working now, or wanting to build up the business. So I still dealt with those. I still took those to the market. But I suppose that the target for me for launching my business in Basingstoke was understanding and realizing that there was a lot of estate agents out there that were effectively dinosaurs, and having gone through the experience of buying my property with an agent and really, really not being impressed with how it went and the service, etc. It was all for me about prospecting. That was what was going to get my business off the ground. And over 2 years later, that is still the driving force of my business, if I'm being honest with you. So there was a hell of a lot of properties that were on the market that was sitting there, that was sticking there, that had a lackluster of marketing, a couple of photos and a floor plan on Rightmove, and you clearly see that after 3 months they weren't moving, they hadn't been changed. And I just attacked those, if I'm being honest with you. I went out prospecting. Direct mail was a key driver for me, and like I say, it still is to today. And I've got a number of stories where the direct mail, off the back of the direct mail, has led to much more business recommendations, etc., etc. So yeah, for me, it was just day and night sending letters out, as many as I could. I was hand delivering some, and when it got to the point where I had so many on my desk that I couldn't hand deliver them all, I was going and getting stamps and they were going out in the post. But yeah, direct mail was the absolute driving force to get the business off the ground.
Yeah, it's funny. It's almost like you mystery shop the other agents in town just by default of buying a property in Basingstoke. You kind of got the experience from start to finish. And when I was at the property franchise group, we used to work with quite a lot of people who are brand new to the estate agency world. And you'd be amazed the number of people who would come forward and say, I've applied to become an estate agent with you guys because I've had an estate agent around to value my property. They've sold the property and the service was so bad from start to finish. I thought I could do a better job than these guys with my eyes closed, and then writing that check at the end of the day sort of thing. I thought I can do this job much better.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's really eye-opening, right? When look, as estate agents, we're sort of caught in that estate agency world, aren't we? But when you step out of it and you look at it from a consumer point of view, it's eye-opening how poor. Don't get me wrong, there's some phenomenal agents out there as well, but yeah, how poor some are. And for me, that was, and I say it to customers, when they ask me how long I've been running my own business and doing it myself, and what was the reason I did it. And for me, that experience was the turning point, which made me think, crikey, if I can't do a better job than this, then I shouldn't be in this estate agency.
So I've stood in rooms before and I've said, right, guys, let's do a big push on direct mail sort of thing. And then we've reconvened like a week or month later sort of thing. And half the room come back and go, direct mail is the worst thing. I sent out so and so and I didn't get any phone calls back from it and direct mail doesn't work. I've got the other half of the room that come back and say, oh, it's amazing. It's the best thing ever. I've got loads of instructions off the back of it. And ultimately, the different when you actually boil down to those two different halves of the room, it's all about the numbers they do. The guys that say it doesn't work have like delivered like five, and the guys that say it does work have delivered like 500. So talk me through the sort of quantities. You mentioned your desk was covered in letters. So are we talking like out every day, once a week? Are we talking hundreds? What's the quantity we're looking at to get the results where you kind of can look back in that and go, actually, that was a really good driving force for my business.
Yeah, so I suppose that's it has changed as the business has developed, and obviously I've then got more roles within my business. Obviously, day one, yeah, my role was direct mail. That was my role, and I would sit there some nights with a pile like that as high as my desk, waiting to go out. So yeah, the first sort of month or two, it was every day, and it might even be a case of trying different things like trial and error, right? Which works for you. But I think for me, it was all about consistently doing that. And then I get to the phase where I'd send people maybe two or three letters. I had a three-letter rule, and then I'd knock on their door. So that was literally my role for the first month. So and then once the valuation started coming in and I started winning instructions, obviously I wasn't able to sort of dedicate my whole day and the whole week to direct mail and door knocking, etc. So I then had to get a system in place that made right without fail. So I'm a very structured person. I always have been. I have to work to structure. If you looked at my diary now, my morning routine's in there. The time I go to the gym, everything is in there up until I finish work of an evening. So I had to then build prospecting and direct mail into that as well, and making sure without fail that on these days I could do that. And it's now 2 mornings a week I spend making sure that all the letters are out and updating all my prospecting systems, etc. Yeah, and even to that day now, it has to be done.
And did you experience any kind of dip at the end of, usually what happens is most estate agents, they start off and they, day one, "Oh, I'm going to smash this and I'm going to door knock and I'm going to do letters and whatever else it might be." And then they start getting instructions on the market appraisals, they start selling properties and, the funner stuff kind of comes around. The stuff
Yeah.
you actually got into estate agency for kind of comes around. And actually their instructions then have a dip at the end of that sort of little period because they've taken their foot off the gas on the lead generation side. With the structures you have, and also you mentioned you're quite a structured person, did you ever experience that sort of dip when you started finding funner things in the business, or did it actually manage to kind of transport over okay?
Yeah, so it was absolutely is the answer to that, and it's without doubt the most valuable lesson I've had in launching my business so far in the 2 years. And yeah, I got pulled into the stage of being recommended to people and thinking, great, this is great, and absolutely took my foot off the gas a little bit. But it didn't last long because, as you say, all of a sudden the valuations start drying up, and you think, why is that happening? Is it me? Have I done something wrong? But then when you go through those structures and what you're doing, I'm just not being as consistent with my direct mail. So yeah, there was probably a space of a couple of months where I took my foot off the gas a little bit with that, and probably largely down to the diary being busier, etc., etc. And then you think you've cracked it, you think you've got the holy grail. People are all of a sudden coming to you to sell their house, and then all of a sudden it starts drying up a little bit. And yeah, sometimes you just need to look back at what you were doing really, really good to get those initial valuations. But look, equally on the same as that as well, like you'll go through where you're continuously doing the same processes and you're consistent with it, but the results won't always be the same because you'll send out 150, 200 letters and you won't get any inquiries back from it. But then all of a sudden, a couple of weeks later, doing exactly the same thing, you'll have 4 or 5 calls back from it, and in the space of a couple of days, and all of a sudden you turn the corner. So yeah, it's just sticking with it, but yeah, learning from the mistakes that I've made in the past, where you take your foot off the gas, and as you say, you're doing the fun side of a estate agency, taking the calls from people that want you to list their house because you've sold their friends, their brothers, their mother's property, not getting carried away with that, and making sure you still do your fundamentals.
How do you have that sort of resilient mindset? Because lots of people will send out a bit of marketing for a period of time. And you mentioned just now, the letters, and sometimes months you get nothing and some months you get quite a few off the back of it. Lots of people will get the kind of the months of nothing and they'll go, oh, bugger it, letters don't work. I'll go try something else. I'll go do Facebook ads or I'll go do some more social
Yeah.
media videos, whatever it may. How do you personally have that discipline to kind of stick with it, even though the results aren't necessarily coming through at that exact moment?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's discipline, right? It's having discipline, but it's understanding what you're good at. Like I say, I've never been one to go and knock doors all day, every day. I'll send out normally like I have a three-letter rule where if they receive three letters, then I'll go and introduce myself because I don't want to come across like that estate agent, like double glazed salesman that's just knocking on your door when you're about to have your tea. My letters have my picture on it, my boards have my picture on it. So by the time they've had three letters from me, I'd like to think they know what I look like, and when I go to knock on their door, they know who I am. But yeah, coming back to your original question, I think it's the discipline to say, right, this has worked for me. And I mentioned a little bit earlier that I've had a number of situations where I can pinpoint that direct mail, that letter going through someone's door, leading to thousands of pounds worth of business for me. And one instance is a property that was on the market. It was on the market with Connells. It'd been on the market for a long time. And I wrote to the person, wrote to the owner. They invited me round and had a cup of tea with them and told them what I would do. They were really impressed. Put it on the market. Showed buyers around that property. The people that ended up offering on the property, they asked me to sell their property because they were really impressed with the marketing. I did the viewings, all of that sort of stuff. And then that then led to me being recommended to their mother. And she has now recommended me to God knows how many people. She's one of those people that are really known in the area. She's in all the community Facebook groups. She's part of the local community groups, and she's recommended left, right, and centre. That has led to, without doubt, double figures of instructions that I've had over the last 2 years. But it all came down to initially sending that letter out. If I hadn't sent that letter out and put that letter through that client's door, and by the way, I've sent probably 4 or 5 letters before they contacted me. All of that business wouldn't have come about. So it's just, and I could list endless amounts of situations that have happened like that. But it's recognizing that being disciplined and sending those letters out, as boring as it might be, at doing it 8 o'clock at night and getting them out the next day, that absolutely it leads to opportunities and further business.
And how has your sort of incoming lead generation, how has that changed over time? Is it still the letters that generate the most instructions for you, or is it now recommendations? What's kind of working for you these days compared to when you first started?
Yeah, obviously. So when I first started, it was pretty much just lead. It was prospecting, lead generation, letters, whatever you want to call it, and that's now balanced out a little bit more. I get recommendations, but I'm monitoring the recommendations are growing because obviously the business is still very, very young, and they are growing. But it's without doubt it's still, and again, tracking it back to those situations of being recommended, etc. A lot of them are leading, and a starting point is my direct mail. So yeah, it's still very, very heavy on that. I think the first 3 or 4 that I took on this year were sorry, the first 4 that the first 5 instructors that I had this year, 4 of them came from direct mail. So it's still very, very heavy. But yeah, the recommendations are growing. I don't think I've definitely not got to a stage where it's 50-50 yet. But yeah, I'd say the recommendations are definitely growing, but direct mail is still an absolute staple for me. And I think you've got to, like, I get them through my door, and my customers get them through their doors, and agents are sending letters out with War and Peace and telling them how great they are, how many houses they're selling. And I think you've got to understand what you're sending that letter for. And for me, it's breaking it down into stages, into barriers. That I send the letter purely not to win an instruction, not to get a house on the market. It's purely to have a conversation. I want someone to call me. I want to have a phone conversation. When I'm having that phone conversation, it's then right. I've now got to try and get an appointment out of it. Try and get an appointment, or at the very least, I've now got their phone number to be able to follow up on name and be able to check in with them. And then once you've got that appointment, it's then go time, right? It's then try and win the instruction. So yeah, it takes a little bit of time to understand how that looks. I think so many agents send letters out trying to win an instruction, and I think if you're doing that, you're failing really. You're going to have very little uptake.
I think it's about understanding what the goal of each marketing exercise is and what goal of each sort of part of your business is, for example. So for me, for door knocking, for example, people might go, oh, it's to win the instruction and get invited in to have a cup of tea and whatever else might be. For me, if I knock on the front door and I walk away with a phone number and a name, high five, like great result. I don't need to knock on their front door again. I can text them, I can WhatsApp them, sort of thing. It's very hard for them to avoid me after that point. And I think with direct mail, again, if you're goal for that is going to get invited round there and then to go, wow, Scott, you're the best letter writer I've ever met in my life, sort of thing. When can you take me on the market? You're probably be quite disappointed. Where actually, if you go, actually, the goal for this letter is just to get across who I am as an individual, so that when I knock on the front door in a 3 weeks' time and say, hi, I'm Scott, they're like, Scott, got your letters, love what you're saying, sort of thing. Then that's absolutely a really good place to be. But I think people sort of over expect sometimes for what some of their marketing to do because they don't actually know what the goal of it is and they get disappointed because they don't get that same sort of result they wanted.
And expecting immediate results as well, right? I think that's key to it. The amount of times I've sent a letter out or I've knocked on the door and spoke to somebody, haven't got any further than just a phone number or they know who I am now. But then I've bumped into them in Sainsbury's or whatever in local Sainsbury's or wherever, and you just spark up another conversation. How's it going? And then they're reminded of you again. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think you've got to have clear goals as to what you're doing and why you're doing it. And not thinking 2 or 3 or 4 spaces ahead, really. Yeah, you've got to break it down into miniature bites.
So you talked earlier about growing your own business and not being able to have that sort of taken away from you effectively. So a big part of that, I imagine, is kind of growing your personal brand in Basingstoke. And I follow you on social media and I see a lot of what you do. And I like to think I comment now and again on it as well. So talk me through sort of what you've done on that side of things to kind of make yourself sort of the go-to person when it comes to sort of personal brand in Basingstoke.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, there's a lot of dinosaur estate agents in my area in Basingstoke, and really I wanted to sort of grab it by the scruff of the neck. So yeah, we content on social media is massive, and that's another area that I'm starting to get business coming through now. Direct people reaching out to me direct through my social media, asking me to come and value their property, or even better, some of them have asked me just to list their homes. I've literally about to take a property on the market on Wednesday for a couple, and it's the third property I've sold for them in the last year, and they reached out through me to me through my social media. So it absolutely works. But yeah, ultimately for me, it's all about being in front of the camera. I do a lot of videos, whether it's property tours, whether it's market updates, whether it's, I call them ahead of the portal, stuff that's coming to the market ahead of it. I work with a videographer, and we do sort of area guides, etc. Again, with me talking about the areas, the reasons I love the areas, pointing out local things like the schools and stuff like that. Things that people can relate to, people that families can relate to if they're moving into that area. I do behind the scenes stuff. Some of the biggest reactions I get are from my bloopers, actually, from stuff that people seem to enjoy me messing up or watching me mess up, and I get a huge amount of traction off of that. My first instruction this year actually came. So I mentioned that 4 of my 5 instructions, first 5 instructions this year, came through direct mail. The other one actually came from somebody reaching out to me after watching my bloopers, and they were like, "Look, been following you for a while. That's absolutely brilliant. Look, we've been thinking about it. Can you come around and value our property, etc." So yeah, just as much content as I can. Obviously, I still do the sales agreed and properties that are completed. Again, just further letting people know that we are selling properties in the area, and I think it sort of rings true if somebody sees a property in their area or even better down their road that we've sold, and they see it on social media, then they sort of connect the dots, so to speak. So yeah, just looking to grow the presence in a more modern way that a lot of my competitors don't really do at the moment. They are changing that though. Many more of them are doing videos. They are doing video tours and stuff. But yeah, it's just making sure that we stay ahead of that.
And is it more recently you kind of really started to gear that up? Because I know we caught up for a drink, I don't know, a year ago, effectively, I think it might have been. And obviously, one of the things I said to you, look, Scott, you need to do a lot more video content, mate. You're good at it, therefore you kind of double down there. Is it things that were you doing that from sort of day one in your business, or is that kind of ramped up over time?
Yeah, no, it's definitely ramped up. It's a confidence thing, right? Getting on camera and being in front of camera so everyone can judge you. It's a confidence thing, and I think once you break that barrier, you then can sort of flourish in the world of video and stuff. So yeah, no, it's definitely something that took a little bit of time to get going, and also like I wanted. I suppose from a confidence perspective, I wanted to be able to talk about more. I wanted to be selling more properties, etc., etc. When in theory you don't need to be doing that. You just need to switch a camera on and get in front of it. So yeah, it's absolutely more and more. We've been doing that. Another thing that's worked really, really well is I've been asking customers to get in front of the camera with me as well. So I do something called moving day with Scott. So we'll normally have completions. They tend to be when we have a like more than one completion on a Friday. We'll go around, we'll watch them moving in, hand the keys over, and they'll get in front of the camera and they'll talk about what their experience was like. And I found that to be really, really powerful. I'm not telling people how great I am. Then it's actually come from the horse's mouth, so to speak. The customers that have used me, and again, it's very relatable to people. Very, very relatable. So yeah, just thinking of new ways to get content out there, really, which is something that I do. My videographer that I work with is very, very good. She works with a lot of content creators, etc. So she comes up with a lot of good ideas as well. And yeah, we try to put as many of them we can together.
And how willing, should we say, are your clients to come forward and do those video testimonies? Because, I think lots of people potentially are willing to do it if you actually say, look, you're happy, give us a quick, 30-second video for ourselves. But lots of agents will be like, oh, I don't want to ask them to do it. So how sort of, once you do say to people, look, you're happy to do a quick 2-minute video sort of thing, are people quite open for that?
Yeah, I suppose it's a generational thing, if I'm being honest with you. The younger generations tend to be, they're more interactive with social media. I've got actually one of my clients, I sold their property. They bought a property through me as well. She's actually a vlogger, so she loved it. She was absolutely couldn't wait to get in front of camera. But others are a little bit more reserved. They're a little bit worried about what they look like and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it comes back to being different, like being a personal estate agent. People have a totally different experience with me. And I think at the end of it, yeah, they tend to be more than happy to talk about it because it was totally different from what they expected. It was totally different from when they thought about selling their home or they thought about buying a property. It was totally different to the experience they were expecting to have. And I think, yeah, they tend to be, you have to ask the right people. Like I've had people that have said no, and that's fine. You respect that decision, and you've had people that have said yes, but it tends to be a generational thing. Younger people are more happy to be on camera than maybe a slightly older generation. But yeah, you have to ask correctly and respect people if they say no.
And what do you do with those testimonials? So you do a quick 2-minute video and they say Scott's the best thing in the world and all this sort of bits and pieces. Does that just go on your socials, or what do you do with that video content after that?
Yeah, so obviously socials, it hits the socials, get shared as much as it can. Do targeted marketing on it as well through the likes of Facebook and Instagram, etc. So targeting certain areas, etc. as well. And then also things like if I'm going out to do a valuation and they've never really heard of me before. They've come to view a property with me and they don't really know any more than that about me, or I've sent them a letter and they've invited me out for a valuation. Again, don't know really much about Scott Morland. I'll use them in my follow-up emails. So I'll send them links that don't take my word for it. This is what my clients actually say, and I haven't typed it out for them. This is what they've actually said. So yeah, things like that, putting it out there in front of people, and yeah, follow-ups and social media is a big part of that.
Yeah, great. I suppose you could always use it as a pre-market appraisal letter sort of QR code, couldn't you? Go to like a Linktree page that has all your reviews listed on there, sort of thing,
Absolutely.
and then just kind of scroll the way through it. So loads of
Yeah,
things.
they're on my website as well. So they're on the website. If people are looking through the website, I've actually had a few people comment on the website actually of how different it is. It's very video heavy, and I think people find it a bit more engaging, don't they?
I love that. So what's next for Scott Morland? What's next? Take over the world? What's the
Yeah, we'll settle with Basingstoke first. Once we've taken over Basingstoke, then we'll move on. But yeah, to be honest with you, I think for me, look, I came from Purple Bricks where it's all about growing at pace, and running ahead of yourself. Like I'm sure many of the ex Purple Bricks guard would admit, you're running at pace and you're literally taking steps ahead when you haven't even sort of got to step one, and you're trying to get to step five, sort of thing. So for me, when I started the business, it was all about I wanted as much organic growth as I could possibly get, but not fall into the trap of, right, I want to have 15 people in my team, but I haven't even listed a house yet, sort of thing. So yeah, look, I'm setting up. Obviously, I've launched Teams with eXp now, so it's my brand, my logo across the portals, etc. That allows me to take on more agents. But as a caveat to that, I wanted to make sure I got the sort of infrastructure of the business right. So I've brought in sales progressors. I've got some admin staff starting soon as well, and that will just free me up to be able to do more of what I love, right? Of getting in front of customers, doing deals, that sort of stuff, and then we can start getting to the point where I'm at capacity. I can then start bringing in agents, and we can build out. That's the idea, is to build out before we go too deep, sort of thing. So yeah, look, just keep growing, keep building up the business, keep building up the reputation, but not that I don't put pressure on myself. I like putting pressure on myself, but not putting pressure on myself to say, right, I've got to have by the end of the year a team of 15. Because that's what it used to be like at Purple Bricks. You literally have to live and die by that. I wanted to make sure that we do it first and foremost. We're doing what's right for the customer. That's why I started my own business, was to do what's right for the customer. Be able to deliver the personal service from beginning to end, and as that builds out, and as like I say, as I get to capacity, then I can take people on, and we can start building out the brand and going into different marketplaces. That's something I'm quite excited about, is going into different marketplaces, having effectively sort of operated across the whole of the south of the UK, as a divisional sales director, looked at loads of different marketplaces, and quite excited about branching into different marketplaces, being able to help and guide and support. That one of the most fun time of my sort of manager leadership career was supporting self-employed agents. If I'm honest with you, I felt those were the most, and I know you work with largely self-employed agents, right? So they're mostly the most receptive. They're with you because they want to be with you, not because they've been told they've got to be in a morning meeting with you. They want to spend time with you, and they take on board a lot of what you say. So I'm quite excited about developing that, and having more self-employed agents work with me. I've got a downline at eXp with sort of 16 agents, so working with those, and yeah, just supporting agents to be able to offer something better, and build a better business for them, and also in the meantime building up my business and my brand.
Scott, thank you so much for coming on today. You've been a brilliant guest, mate. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.